What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It's your boy Adam Perez back once again with a brand new episode as we're going to be getting into our What If review for episodes 4, 5, and 6. That's right. We got 3 more episodes here this week. We're continuing to get one a day for 9 days straight. So I believe the finale drops this upcoming Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, on my birthday too. So I'm really looking forward to it. So if anything, I'm going to be trying to drop this for you guys on Friday. So hopefully I make it in time, if you will, and then hopefully this weekend wrap this up for you guys also. So I've really been enjoying these episodes, quite honestly. The episodes 4 and 5 here this week certainly kind of took place returning to some characters that we were quite familiar with the Guardians of the Multiverse, the team that we saw that was put together in the finale for season 1 of What If. The Watcher in one of these episodes does mention the idea like, hey, I don't really like to do sequels because of the fact of the multiverse being so massive and so many different tales and characters and stories to certainly focus on. But funny thing enough, we wind up getting to visit 2 characters from season 1, and here Captain Carter, who I'm always certainly a big fan of, and continues to clearly have a big significant role in the multiverse. And then we also got a little bit of an origin story from Gamora in here in episode number 4. So getting an opportunity to revisit some things from some characters we're familiar with. If I did have a pet peeve though, and I don't want to say it's a pet peeve, but it's something that's becoming more and more glaring as we get further and further away from, like, say, phases 1 and 2, is that a lot of these origin points, and I guess it makes sense that a lot of these origin points are beginning at things like the invasion of New York, right? And like that particular New York battle. Like I think we had several scenarios in here of like leaping off points, if you will, from that particular moment. And so, there is a part of me that it's like, while I know episodes 4, 5, or I should say phases 4, 5, and 6 aren't fully wrapped up yet, there are other moments, other moments in time through the first 3 phases I kinda would like to see maybe a little bit more of. I mean, look, we did get the Guardians of the Galaxy, Peter Quill episode type of moment, right? But, there's just so many other options, and it's just fascinating that, Invasion of New York continues to be certainly that main focus. It makes sense, but I'm just saying 2nd season of What If, maybe we're just spreading our wings a little bit more because we did get ourselves a quite original character and Kahhori in episode number 6 to really revitalize me a little bit in the sense of really introducing us to a new character, giving us a brand new sort of origin story, and really see how it plays differently during a particular period in time, also, which I think is another added effect. This very much being sort of like I don't want to say, well, I guess maybe the world, not necessarily the world's first superhero, but maybe along those lines, right? It doesn't seem like many people were very much aware of that type of power that Kahhori certainly possessed anywhere else in the world. So it definitely reshapes the world, which is actually the name of that particular title. And so that is fascinating to kind of see a hero, if you will, being born, or somebody with abilities. So What If does have that flexibility to kind of go with things that you're familiar with and still give us brand new concepts to really explore. And I think that alone from episode 6, even though I didn't really care so much for the story itself, there were some really impactful elements to it, to certainly say the least. But there was just like a creative flourishing or something like it was just, I don't know, it just felt really great to kind of see Marvel, especially in the animation realm, really explore a brand new character like that. So I thought we got a lot of really great things here from these 3 episodes in general. And I gotta say, if anything continues to impress me before we really break down the first 3 episodes, the animation just is just clean to me. I feel like, there's a ton of different sort of animation and art styles that Marvel certainly could have gone with, but the fact that they landed on this one, it just feels so fluid and smooth, and all the movements look great, just elegant or impactful, very cinematic in its look, the cinematography and the choices of just the shots and things like that, and the artwork that they pick. It just really works for me, and I find this season rather stunning, to the point it's like I really do hope that it gets nominated for some sort of animation Emmy or television series because it feels very much deserving 6 episodes in, honestly. But guys, let's really go ahead and break down these episodes, if you will, man, because I'm excited to talk about them with you. I'll be honest though, the first episode here, episode 4, Iron Man crashed into the Grandmaster. Now, there are certain titles that I think at Hero Report we talked about. I think it may be one of the honorable mention sections about some of the episode titles that really stood out to us that we were looking forward to. When I saw Iron Man crash into the Grandmaster, there was a part of me that kind of rolled my eyes a little bit because, when it comes to Ragnarok, the fact that we're revisiting the Grandmaster and just, his antics, and I just thought to myself, like, this is just going to be such a silly and over the top episode. I'm just really not going to care for it so much. But you know what? To be honest with you, I thought this was such a really well written sort of episode in general. To be able to kind of have such really great witty banter from somebody like a Tony Stark, working opposite of Jeff Goldblum, who does actually come back and voice the Grandmaster in here. I think actually a lot of people who reprised their voice roles for these characters, with the exception of Robert Downey Jr., and certainly not coming back as Tony Stark, but everybody else, I believe, from the casting list that I saw at the end, came back and reprised their roles and did their voices again. But Jeff Goldblum, with Tony Stark, and just the really smart dialogue, I thought at times really put it over the top for me. I had a really fun time with this episode. The fact that we wind up getting ourselves a brand new sort of Iron Man suit that has that Sakaar unique artistic style to it, and also turns into a really cool race car, I think worked perfectly for this particular episode, honestly. So yeah, man, I was a really big fan of just the way that this episode was certainly handled. I think it could have easily jumped off the rails and just not being meaningful whatsoever, but I really enjoyed it. I think Korg, we've seen Korg multiple times in this What If series so far for season 2, and he continues to be like the all-star for me for this season. I believe we saw him also in like the first episode with Nebula, if I'm not mistaken, really adding some levity and humor, and he does the same here. This definitely has sort of like the Ragnarok vibes, but you're also taking the serious aspect of Tony Stark literally just coming off of, again, the invasion of New York, not being able to kind of go home sort of thing. You're taking some really interesting elements and kind of combining them, and it turns out to be magic. It really worked out for me in this particular week's episode here. So again, I thought the writing was really, really good. There's some really great lines in here and jokes, like when Tony Stark sees Korg for the first time, he says, "Hey, Mount Rushmore." Like, there's a Mount Rushmore line in there that I thought was just pure genius. He also has a great line towards Gamora after they wind up trapping her in the room and she escapes. He says, "Did you glare your way out of that cell?" I thought it was some really great lines in here, honestly. Cool death race vibes, if you will. I was getting like a mixture of death race for sure, with like a hint of like pod racing from the Phantom Menace and Star Wars a little bit. But even I find myself even being really involved in the race. I thought that was filmed incredibly well. Just really smart editing choices, writing choices, great choice of characters to certainly have in here. I mean, having Valkyrie is sort of like that badass death race car driver sort of thing really fit with Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie vibes, right? So they all felt very much true to their character. And then on top of just the craziness that's happening on Sakaar with Tony Stark and the Grandmaster, then you kind of throw in that origin story of Gamora, right? The idea that this story really starts because of the fact that Tony Stark as Iron Man, if you recall him having that nuclear bomb going through the portal, throwing it at the Tesseract, not the Tesseract, the Chitauri army, and destroying it, right? Tony Stark falling back through the portal, and he normally comes back home to New York City. But in this particular story, he does not make it in time, and instead he winds up getting bounced through different dimensions or whatever the case may be around the galaxy, and he lands on Sakaar. And the origin story for Gamora here is that Thanos is pissed about his Chitauri armor just being destroyed by Tony Stark, and he wants his head. And so we've got Gamora here, who has a very serious mission that she needs to not only make her father proud, but also look a certain way in front of him, right? And so you have this really like goofy aspect of the episode, but also an idea here of seeing like Tony Stark, even though he's gone, continuing to impact other characters' lives in some way, right? Reaching the far reaches of the galaxy here. And in this episode, it is in fact Gamora. Really that idea of like, you know, he's firsthand has seen the destruction that Thanos has done. How can she kind of live with herself and knowing that that's who she's, you know, helping out here, the person that's willing to kill millions of lives? And she's seen that for herself, right? Like she's seen the destruction that Thanos can do to a planet and to its people, and the idea of like why she's even with Thanos in the first place. And so I just thought it was like really interesting back and forth between these two characters throughout this episode, to the point of convincing her to eventually turn on her father and do the right thing in regards to leaving the galaxy a better place than what you found it, if you will, according to how one of Tony Stark's mottos, sort of thing. So I just thought it was a really touching homage, if you will, to Tony Stark and just the impact that he's had in the MCU, but also seeing the impact that he's having in the other aspects of the multiverse as well. And to see that kind of lead Gamora to go on to become one of the guardians of the multiverse, I think is a really pivotal and really great moment in her life for What If as a series to really focus on. So for me, I was actually a pretty big fan of that particular episode number 4. But let's go ahead and also get into episode number 5. I believe this one was titled What If Captain Carter Fought the Hydra Stomper. This was definitely one of the episodes that immediately jumped out at me on the episode title list, because again, I'm a huge fan of Captain Carter. You know, while I was really thrilled to see her pop up in something like Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness sort of thing, I do wish that she was explained a little bit better or had more time with that particular character, but maybe sometime in the future. If not, I'll definitely take it in the form of animation. And so the fact that The Watcher wind up allowing us to continue to focus on her and really her adventures after the season finale in season 1, and really continuing to show us at the end of this episode just the even bigger impact that she's going to have, as I'm assuming this is not the last time that we have in fact seen of Captain Carter. I wouldn't surprise me if she pops up into the 1602 episode that we're going to be getting here rather later, based off of just the versions of Scarlet Witch and Samuel L. Jackson in here also. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more adventures of Captain Carter. But when it comes to the episodes here, I felt a little, I don't know how I felt about this particular episode. There are moments that I was a really big fan of, and there are other ones that felt just kind of dragged me down a little bit. Like when I immediately look at this episode and go back to it, I certainly get sort of Captain America, the Winter Soldier vibes mixed in here a little bit with like Black Widow, if you will, right? Like instead of it being the Winter Soldier and like Bucky as sort of like this deep dark secret, and he's been this serial killer machine for years that's just been like this secret rumor that nobody knows about, and Steve Rogers discovers Bucky. In this particular What If scenario, it feels very much like it's Steve Rogers now in that particular situation as the Winter Soldier, right? This idea of being revealed that this person that you care about that you thought was dead long ago comes back to come to find out that they have in fact survived, that they've been killing and assassinating people for years in secret, being this like mysterious rumor and speculation out there that people have been keeping from you from years, sort of thing. It's the same exact thing when it comes to this particular episode, but for Captain Carter. And if anything, one of the aspects about the episode that I did enjoy by reintroducing Steve Rogers in here as the Hydra, what is it called? The Hydra Stomper. We literally just got off of seeing Captain Carter almost be near damn invincible in season 1 of What If, with the incredible Ultron that they certainly had to fight and the impossible odds that were certainly stacked against them, right? So you already get the sense that Captain Carter can do anything, but you get into this episode and they give you the one thing that allows Captain Carter to sort of be at her most vulnerable, and that is in fact Steve Rogers. So the fact that they were able to really have an emotional punch to really get Captain Carter off her game, I thought was a really smart move in regards to like the next choice of story that you want to tell for somebody like a Captain Carter that can certainly still have impact, even though I will say very much like Black Widow, who called it immediately when Steve Rogers sort of comes back and is awakened for the first time, sort of thing. She's like, that's not Steve. She's absolutely right, because this Steve Rogers just gave off those sort of like those really creepy vibes, you know what I'm saying? Like I can't trust this person whatsoever, like trying to get me over with your charm, right? Trying to get me all comfortable and stuff, suck me in, get me very emotional with your charming words and stuff, only to go ahead and want to kill me at the end of the day, sort of vibes, right? Like that's exactly what he was kind of giving off there. But she was falling for it, man. She was falling for it hard, unfortunately, in this particular week's episode. But for the most part, I thought it was pretty solid. Like if I did enjoy certain aspects of it also, it was pretty cool to get the opportunity to see Captain Carter actually lead a group of Avengers. Also, again, this being another starting point of going back to the invasion of New York, I am very much was really looking for, especially fresh off of just episode 4, where we just had that particular moment also, granted the tail end of the invasion, but then we come into episode 5 and it's like, hey, the invasion of New York once again, sort of thing. So I to say episode 6 was a breath of fresh air, I think is a little bit of an understatement in that regards. If anything, the aspect of including the Black Widow side of that movie into this series, you get a little bit of that Red Room action, that idea that yes, Steve Rogers died years ago, but the Red Room found him, and the same thing in which they do for their Black Widows in regards to mind controlling them and brainwashing them and being able to activate them and stuff. The Red Room is now doing that for Steve Rogers as the Hydra Stomper. So an incredible asset for them to definitely have, and a very powerful one. And so it was kind of cool to kind of see like another agency aside from like Hydra really make their presence known in that sort of way. Made them feel like they were a bigger deal than what they normally are. But you know, like I didn't care for the Steve Rogers sacrifice at the end, sort of thing, right? Like the woman that you love is literally telling you that she wants to spend the rest of your life with you, that she's tired and she's exhausted of fighting, sort of thing, which I thought was an interesting twist on that. I am curious about her mentality, certainly going forward, which would make sense based off of everything that she's already seen, right? But, you know, the answer for Steve in that moment is, I need to kill myself. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm pretty sure there's probably other ways you could have gone about, like, removing the mind control or the ability for them to activate you. I don't know if the sacrificing was the best first choice, you know what I'm saying? But he certainly did so, or at least it looked that way to me. But surprisingly, at the end of this, after we see him literally shoot himself through the Red Room headquarters, and it explodes and comes down into a fiery crash, somewhere in Captain Carter's head, she's under the impression that Steve is still out there somewhere. I can feel it. He's safe. I know he's alive. What are you talking about? Did you not see the gigantic fireball screeching out of the sky with all the metal parts and stuff? I'm pretty sure his Hydra Stomper armor is probably in there somewhere. So it kind of blew my mind that she was under the impression that he was certainly going to be living through all of that. But to certainly say the least, even the Watcher himself was surprised as to how this was going to go ahead and turn out. And we come to find out that Captain Carter pretty much gets abducted and sort of thrown into another multiversal portal, this time landing, I would assume, in 1602. And I will say, this is the aspect of What If that I really, really dig and appreciate, because of the fact that they can really take these sharp left turns, if you will. You know, the Watcher being surprised in here very much reminds me of the Watcher in What If Season 1 being surprised when Ultron actually notices him and is able to get into his realm as well, right? And so the fact that something is happening in the universe that the Watcher can't explain for himself is, one, really startling, and two, it just makes me think, wow, we're really building towards maybe a possible big event here, very similar to how season 1 wind up ending. So it does have me interested in the direction in which it's certainly going to go. So I'm looking forward to it. And then based off of how episode 6 winds up ending, something big is definitely coming, I think so. But overall, when it comes to episode 5, enjoyable, but there's like an aspect and slow part of this episode, like when they go to the town and it's just the creepy, robots and stuff that wind up shooting the little buzz zapper, stings or whatever the case may be. I didn't really care for that whole entire scenario, honestly. They really lost me there. But the action in episode 5 was unbelievable, especially when you split up Captain Carter and the Hydra Stomper, and then on one side you've got Black Widow facing off against her mother. The editing in that was just gorgeous. The idea of like seeing somebody get kicked and then cutting to the next character receiving like a punch sort of thing, just really cool in how they transition back and forth to certain sequences in certain fight scenes. And then the idea of like Captain Carter being bludgeoned with these huge cars just being smacked up against her sort of thing. I mean, you were able to feel the impact. Just really great eye for how they wanted to execute the action in this animation style. So episode 5 definitely delivered in that regards, but did certainly fall short in others. But it definitely left on a high note. So I'm really eager to see where Captain Carter goes from here. Now, when it comes to episode 6, this one is titled, What If Kahhori Reshaped the World? Now, this takes place way back very much in like indigenous North American times, possibly before it became colonized. They even go farther back in regards to this story from the Watcher himself that explains how we got to this situation. Now, normally Odin winds up delivering the Tesseract to a small village or town on Earth sort of thing, where it winds up kind of staying dormant and hidden for years, right? Like that's the original origin story. But for this episode, Ragnarok comes early and it stops Odin from delivering it to Earth. And instead, during Ragnarok, in, I guess, Asgard's destruction, the Tesseract winds up being destroyed, but there's a piece, a remnant of the Tesseract that's certainly still intact, and it makes its way to Earth that way during this particular time period. And so it winds up landing in, it doesn't really say like what part of North America or the country that it's certainly in at this time, but apparently it crash lands into a lake, which then people wind up deeming cursed, if you will. This lake winds up really taking on the really cool legend of the Fountain of Youth, and the idea of like the Spanish conquistadors looking for this special legendary place that they've certainly heard so much about. That is one aspect of this episode, like just storytelling wise, how you use things like myths and legends and things like that and incorporate them sort of into the Marvel history. And so the fact that the Tesseract sort of plays that role of sort of blessing, if you will, this fountain, which we eventually come to discover is really the sky world. As anybody that winds up entering this particular lake, the Tesseract sucks them through. And this is something that Kahhori experiences firsthand while they're trying to escape some Spanish conquistadors. And so by falling through this is really how Kahhori winds up getting her powers. So I did find again the time period rather interesting. Clearly, you can see the idea of colonization certainly taking over in certain aspects of here too. And I love the fact that Kahhori really comes across a whole new world of like lost tribesmen of her people, if you will, just generations of them, people that have just simply falling into this particular tesseract, or this world that's now encompassing inside of this tesseract, and gifting them special abilities. They looks like they're all like little indigenous Captain Marvels. We're kind of running around with the type of abilities that they certainly have, and it's pretty dope to kind of see what they're capable of doing. But it's not until the Spanish conquistadors actually discover this fountain for themselves as well, where Kahhori realizes that the threat is certainly still much bigger on the outside of things. And so for me, it was just really cool to kind of see Kahhori learn her powers, be able to tap into, like just the idea of, I don't know, I thought I heard somewhere that they were speaking, one of the articles that I read said they might have been speaking like a Mohawk language. I don't necessarily know like the tribe in which Kahhori certainly belongs to, but if anything, I felt like they really tapped into the culture in regards to just the embrace of nature, right? And being with the animals and things like that, and really feeling the spirit. And I definitely got like almost Star Wars vibes to a certain extent with this episode of utilizing the Force in certain ways also, you know what I mean? So I thought it was just a really cool story in regards to establishing an origin story, her having something to definitely fight for, right? The idea that these people have gotten so comfortable with these powers that they've never tried to actually go back to the real world and utilize them, certainly for good. And she challenges them in that regards. And so when she realizes that her people are under threat, this is her ability and her time to go ahead and do something about it. And so it takes that sort of courage, and it takes that sort of person to step out and say, I'm going to take this matter into certainly my own hands. And before you know it, we have a hero born right in front of us, right? And so I thought that was actually a really powerful story for Kahhori to certainly tell, especially again during this particular time period where she literally pushes off the concept and idea of colonizing her place, you know what I'm saying, her land, if you will. But there is one aspect I will say about this story that fascinates me: the way that the Watcher tells the story at the end. Once Kahhori certainly has her powers and her abilities, and she's running off the conquistadors, she's killed or at least I'm assuming she's killed sort of like the main captain, if you will. The fact that she then takes that opportunity to eventually go to, I guess, Spain, or wherever sort of the queen is at, and confront her herself was fascinating, because while it felt like they initially came in peace, the fact that the Spaniards kind of gave pushback, she used her abilities very much in sort of a forceful way of kind of putting them in their place, right? In the sense of like, look, you can try all you want to, you're not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. If there's anybody that's stronger in here, it's me. Look how vulnerable you are at this point in time. And the Watcher talks about the idea of her then spreading peace to the rest of the world. And it just felt like this feels like a very forceful type of peace that she's putting on people. Because I think there's even a line in here where she says something along the lines of, there will be no future for your people if there's no peace, sort of thing. And I'm like, well, that sounds like you want to exterminate them if they don't, you know what I'm saying? Like if they don't live up to your standards, sort of thing. It just came across darker than maybe um I expected, but it's also again the time period in the sense of colonizing and people coming in and trying to take your land and take your people from you. The idea of you having a forceful response, it doesn't seem surprising. But I think what even made it the moment even more dark is the fact that at the end, the Supreme Strange, or however you want to say his name, Strange Supreme, shows up. And nothing ever good happens when this guy is certainly around. I'm very curious about his intentions. He talks about the idea that he's been looking for her for quite some time. He says, "Oh, look at you! You brought world peace in a matter, in a pretty short time. It's not gonna last," sort of thing. It almost feels like he appreciates sort of like the iron hand that the powerful hand that she's exuding in regards to spreading this piece, if you will. So I'm like, if he's interested in her, are there dark elements to Kahhori in certain aspects, or is it just the power that he wants because of the fact that it in fact does come from the Tesseract itself? You know what I'm saying? So look, I could be getting those vibes from Kahhori at the end completely wrong, but look, I am kind of curious to know what you guys think in that regards. But overall though, visually it was really stunning. I am kind of curious as to, is she going to have a bigger role? It feels like she might have a bigger role within the future of the multiverse, maybe the future of just what if in general. Maybe she continues a story in season 3 like some of these characters have continued their story in season 2. So there's definitely a lot of possibilities here, but it feels like there's a clear future for her. If there was a weak episode out of this batch of 3, the Kahhori one probably might be it. I think, if anything, the action sequence in the end of episode 5 really saved that one for me. But Kahhori episode was still pretty solid. I don't think there's any episode that I've watched that I've just not enjoyed. If anything, I think episode 6 did a great job in giving us a great origin story for maybe a hero, and a very bright future, to certainly say the least. But yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts in regards to these 4 episodes. Did you have a favorite? Did you not care for some of them? What are some characters you were excited to see again, or that you want to see more of? Definitely go ahead and let me know, because remember, guys, at the end of the day, these are just simply my A+ opinions, but I want to know yours. So let your thoughts be known down below in the comment section, and of course, we'll definitely try and see you guys next time. So we got 3 more episodes left, episodes 7, 8, and 9. I'll bring that to you guys here this weekend, and we'll go ahead and wrap up the What If season 2, guys. But thank you guys so much for certainly joining me. But until next time, do me a big favor as always, guys. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.